Hello, I'm in Chapel Hill today. I want to try to go to as many bookstores in the Chapel Hill area as I can. And I want to go into every bookstore and ask for a recommendation and then buy the book that they recommend me. And see how many different books I can get. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I get some books that I actually like, because new books are expensive. I'm also going to go to some used bookstores. So, yeah, I'm excited.
I was listening to Fourth Wing in the car, and I honestly thought it was insufferable. What did you guys think? Did you listen to it or read it?
Mayor Juan's here, everybody.
How's it going, Wildcat?
Walking to the bookstore. We're gonna go to Prologue first. Prologue and Epilogue, I think. It's the same building. It's like a little cafe bookstore. I'm very excited. Would you care if I ask you a question?
Sure.
What's the last book that you read?
The last book I read, Renegades.
Renegades by who?
Marissa Meyer, I think it is.
Okay.
You're gonna see all of my recs are sci-fi or horror.
Okay.
But A Botanical Daughter is also really interesting. It's about a couple in Victorian England who build like a Frankenstein's monster together. But one of them's a botanist and one of them's a taxidermist, so they make her out of like flowers and ferns, which is really cool. So those two, I think, are two of the more recent ones that I've read.
Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So I got recommended this A Botanical Daughter book by Noah Medlock. So this is another science fiction recommend, and basically it sounds like there's a Frankenstein thing going on in here, and a botanist and another type of scientist make a woman or a person out of dead stuff. I don't really know, but I don't usually read science fiction, but I kind of have to admit I'm a little excited for this one.
Hell yeah, brother.
Do you think I could ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me what the last book you read was?
Yeah, so actually just this morning I finished the book This Is How You Lose the Time War. It's
Okay.
by Max Gladstone. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. I enjoyed it, but I typically don't lean towards science fiction books. And
Right.
It definitely felt a little bit more science fiction-y.
Yeah.
But it did have a little bit of romance, and it was also a quick read, so it kind of got me out of my reading slump.
Okay. Cool. Thank you very much. I
Yeah, of
appreciate
course.
it. Which book did you recommend me?
Okay, so this is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, which I'm kind of obsessed with. It's kind of considered cozy fantasy. It has, all the kind of world building and great characters of like high fantasy, but it has coffee shops and bookstores and romance, and the characters are lovely. And I'm just reading the prequel to this, Bookshops and Bone Dust, but yeah, I'm obsessed. I love it.
So I've been enjoying this experiment. It's been cool to like force myself to talk to people that I normally wouldn't talk to, and specifically like about something that I love, you know. So wish me luck. I think some people have been like really not about getting filmed, which I totally understand, but it is awkward when like somebody really doesn't want to talk to you and you're like, hey, you want to talk to me? Going into another bookstore. I'm too bad Marwan's not here because there's a Cybertruck in front of me. And it's wrapped in blue. He would really like that. I want it to be known that I am not into the Cybertruck, but Marwan is. I mean, I can kind of see the appeal. It's definitely weird. Look at that. Stupid. It's got nice brakes on it, though. Anyway, no one wanted to be filmed in the other bookstore. But I got recommended James, which was on my to-read list anyway, which is awesome. It was pretty funny. I asked like 2 people what their recommendations were, and one of them was not in the bookstore, and the other person simply could not find a book that they had recently read in the bookstore. So two strikes. And then I just asked the guy selling books what he would recommend, and he said James. So we're winning. So this is a book I would have never bought on my own. It seems pretty old. I think it's a classic, maybe. It's a Penguin book. I don't really know what that means. But a very old man recommended this to me. The guy who owned the store, Books Do Furnish a Room. Whole store is a used bookstore. Very quirky. It has like CDs in it and stuff. Very cool. So yeah. Well, that bookstore was a little crowded, but the woman in there who maybe owns the store or just works there, her name's Gail. She did not want to be filmed. She recommended me this book. It's by an Asheville author. I've never heard of it before, and I have no idea what it's about. She just said it's about a young man. Well, I've been to about 6 bookstores today, and I'm pretty exhausted. So I'm gonna go home and work for a little while, and then Marwan and I are gonna go out to the mall, and then we're gonna go to Cheesecake Factory. I love cheesecake. Okay. Marwan and I are going to Cheesecake Factory to get some cheesecake. I'll always be getting cheesecake.
But I don't like. It's kind of like hot dogs. I don't know. I don't want to know where it comes from. It's like at the factory.
Wow, the vibes. There's children.
A lot of money in there.
Yeah, should we get it?
We stole about $50 worth of it when we were kids and we got kicked out.
I kind of do love the vibes in here. It's like, it's the most lit mall I've ever been in.
Definitely a pretty good place.
Yeah. One of Marwan's personality traits is that he likes purple mattresses.
feel like there's just not much extra here. We just have this.
My sister had a baby, and it was born without any arms or legs. And I picked up extra shifts at the factory to help out. This is my son. We're still waiting on Cheesecake Factory. We've been waiting for an hour. It's kind of crazy. Got some sushi. Okay. So, you're just gonna have to forgive me because I refuse to be uncomfortable in my own home. I refuse to wear real clothes in my own house. You will probably always see me in this robe or my pajamas because this is my at-home uniform, okay? I'm not gonna dress up just for this video. But I do want you to know that when I go outside, I wear regular clothes. And I usually look pretty nice. So you're just gonna have to keep watching these videos if you ever want to see me wearing regular clothes. Anyway, let's get into the books that we picked up while we were doing this experiment. So basically, I went into every independent bookstore that I could get to in a timely fashion in like Raleigh and Carrboro. So the first bookstore I went into was Prologue, which is also a cafe, and that's on Franklin Street in Carrboro or Chapel Hill. I don't know. They're so close together, I never know which one I'm in. But while I was in there, I got recommended a sci-fi book by some really cool person in a leather jacket. But unfortunately, the sci-fi book was not there. So my goal for this experiment was to buy books that I could immediately get my hands on in the store. So then after I asked this person in the leather jacket and found out that I could not get the book that they recommended me, I asked a bookseller, and she told me about this book. It's called A Botanical Daughter. And apparently it's a take on Frankenstein in a way, but it involves a botanist. So let's see, we're gonna read the back. It is an unusual thing to live in a botanical garden, but Simon and Gregor are an unusual pair of gentlemen. Hidden away from the disapproving tattle of Victorian London, they are free to follow their own interests without interference. For Simon, this means working his taxidermal art. Gregor's business is exotic plants, lucrative but harmless enough. Until his latest acquisition, a strange fungus which shows signs of intellect beyond any plant he's seen, inspires him to attempt a masterwork, true intelligent life form plant matter. Driven by the glory he'll earn from the Royal Horticultural Society for such an achievement, Gregor ignores the flaws in his plan. That intelligence cannot be controlled, that plants cannot be reasoned with, and that the only way his plant beast will flourish is if he uses a recently deceased corpse for the substrate. Yeah, so I mean, it sounds super interesting. I think it's a sci-fi again, which I'm not used to reading. Like if I went into a bookstore, the first person I asked almost always recommended sci-fi to me, which is not something I often read. I definitely prefer like high fantasy, with like a lot of politics in it, or like realistic magic and things like that, and then probably historical fiction. But I went in asking for people's recommendations without telling them what I liked because I specifically wanted to be exposed to new things. So yeah, A Botanical Daughter is probably not the first thing I'm gonna read. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the smallest books first, or like a really small book first, and then go for some of the medium-sized ones. There's one book you'll see in here that is huge, and I will be reading that last. Okay, so then I went to a used bookstore that also sells some new books called Fig something. Let me see. Okay, it's called Golden Fig Books. And I love that store. That's the one that I usually go to when I'm in Carborough and I want to buy a little book. And I do believe that this is a used book because it was only $8.50. So this one's called This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. So this has been talked about on the internet for a while. From what I understand, I've never been compelled to pick it up on my own, but it sounds really interesting. So basically, I think it was written by 2 authors at the same time. And it says it's a twisting, sapphic time travel fantasy love story that never stops surprising. Readers will reach the end and want to turn back to the start. So let's read the back. In the ashes of a dying world, Red finds a letter marked "Burn Before Reading." So begins an unlikely correspondence between 2 rival agents in a war that stretches through the vast reaches of time and space. Red belongs to the Agency, a post-singularity technotopia. Blue belongs to a garden, a single vast consciousness embedded in all organic matter. Their pasts are bloody and their futures are mutually exclusive. They have nothing in common save that they're the best, and they're alone. Now what begins as a battlefield boast grows into a dangerous game. One both red and blue are determined to win, because winning's what you do in war, isn't it? A tour de force collaboration from 2 powerhouse writers that spans the whole of time and space. I know this one is really popular. I asked the girl in the bookstore what the last thing she read was, and she said that she read this for her book club. I filmed her saying that, so you probably know.
This is How You Lose the Time War.
It's just kind of funny because she only gave it 3 stars.
I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads.
And I still want it. So I know that a lot of people really enjoyed this book, so I'm hoping that it'll be more than 3 stars for me. But it looks like it'll be kind of a quick read. It's like 200 pages. It's 198 pages, so that's not too bad. It'll be pretty easy. Okay, and then we have Legends and Lattes. I went into Flyleaf Books, and I think I asked 2 people books they would recommend. Nobody wanted to be on camera. I asked a lot of people if they wanted to be on camera, and pretty much everybody said no, except for I think 2 people. But this person who worked at the bookstore was nice enough to be on camera for me. And yeah, when I first went into Flyleaf Books, I asked a woman what she would recommend to me, and she was the only person who recommended a nonfiction book to me. And it was, I think it was called Green Economics, and it was about trying to make economics more environmentally friendly, which sounded really interesting to me. So I went up to the bookseller and asked them if they had it, but they did not. Then I just asked the bookseller what they would recommend to me. This person informed me that they had just read Legends and Lattes, which is like a cozy fantasy that I believe is maybe based on somebody's original character in their Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I play Dungeons and Dragons, so, you know, I'm definitely not opposed to reading this book. I am interested because I've never read a book that was like so fantasy, you know. It's kind of funny because like I definitely prefer fantasies that like stay in their lane a little bit. I don't think anybody was making lattes in like the hundreds or like medieval times were. I'm gonna be interested to see if I enjoy this book. I don't think I'm gonna hate it, but I think it's probably gonna be like 3 stars for me.
And if it's more than that, I'll be really surprised. And I hope it is, because like this is something I would like to enjoy. Especially since I already like fantasy. This was a used book as well. Flyleaf Books has a very large used book section as well as a new book section. So that's really cool. I like it when bookstores have both, because that means that they can carry more titles. Because a lot of times, you know, new bookstores only have new books that were recently released. And sometimes, like, that means even if they were released like 2 or 3 years ago, they just won't have them. Yeah, I really appreciated their selection. I love that bookstore. The customer service is obviously great. Travis Baldia wrote this book, Legends and Lattes. So let's read the back. Take a break from epic battles and saving the world. This is my new comfort read. After a lifetime of bounties and bloodshed, Viv is hanging up her sword for the last time. The battle-weary orc aims to start fresh, opening the first coffee shop in the city of Thune. But rivals old and new stand in the way of success, not to mention the fact that no one has the faintest idea of what coffee actually is. If Viv wants to put the blade behind her and make her plans a reality, she won't be able to go it alone. But the true rewards of uncharted path are the travelers you meet along the way. And whether drawn together by ancient magic, a flaky pastry, or a freshly brewed cup, they may become partners, family, and something deeper than she could have ever dreamed. So I think Viv might fall in love with a succubus, which I do love. I love a succubus. It's definitely my favorite monster. I never kill them in The Witcher. You'll never find me killing a lady in The Witcher. Except Brux's, I guess. It's kind of unavoidable. Okay, so then I went from Carborough to Raleigh. And I went into a bookstore that I don't remember the name of off the top of my head. I probably should have watched the footage back before I started filming this. It's called The Regulator. I don't know why I didn't just look.
I went in there and I asked some really cool looking people what they would recommend me. And all of them could not find the book that they would recommend in the store. There was this really nice lady who was going to school to be a therapist or a social worker that I spoke to. She stood in front of the LGBTQ section for a really, really long time, but then she never told me anything that she would pick. So, shout out to her for like really trying to recommend me a book. She was really cool. But then I asked another person what they would recommend, and they recommended me a sci-fi book that I don't remember the name of. And that book also was not in there. I think it might have been Red Rising. I don't know why I just remembered that, but I think it might have been Red Rising. And this bookstore did not have that book. So then, since I already asked like 2 or 3 people what they would recommend and the book wasn't there, I asked the bookseller again what they would recommend to me, and they were like, oh, well, what do you like? And I was like, no, I can't tell you that. So they recommended me a book called James, which is on my to-read list anyway. This is definitely something I would pick up on my own. And I think it is like a new take on Huckleberry Finn, which I never read. So I'll probably read that after I read this one. Okay, yeah. A brilliant reimagining of Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, both harrowing and ferociously funny, told from the enslaved Jim points of view. Everett has mastered the movement between unspeakable terror and knockout comedy. When Jim overhears that he is about to be sold to a man in New Orleans, separated from his wife and daughter forever, he runs away until he can formulate a plan. Meanwhile, Huck has faked his own death to escape his violent father. As all the readers of American literature know, thus begins the dangerous and transcendent journey by raft down the Mississippi River towards the elusive and unreliable promise of the free states and beyond.
Brimming with the electrifying humor and lacerating observations that have made Everett a literary icon, this brilliant and tender novel radically illuminates Jim's agency, intelligence, and compassion as never before. James is destined to be a major publishing event and a cornerstone of the 21st century of American literature. So yeah, this is right up my alley. A little historical fiction, a little new take on an old classic. And I'll definitely read Huckleberry Finn after I read this one, because you gotta read the classics. It's a nice hardcover. Thank you to the bookseller who recommended me this. So then I went into this really crazy used bookstore that's owned by this old man. And it was kind of cool because later I went back to my car and I bought some Girl Scout cookies because there was a stand. And I was talking to the woman who was selling the Girl Scout cookies, and I was like explaining to her the premise of this video. And I was like, yeah, I just went into this like kooky little bookstore that is called like Books Really Do Make the Room or something. And she was like, oh my God, like that's my neighbor who owns that store. So I thought that was really funny. So anyway, so I like walked into the used bookstore. It was pretty hard to find because it was in like the recesses of a parking lot next to a fried chicken place. And I almost bought some chicken, but I had just eaten, so I didn't do it. But so I went into this used bookstore and there were a lot of people in there, but it was like dead quiet, and I did not want to like walk around and ask. It was just like not the vibe where I should have been like walking around and asking like, hey, what would you recommend me? Especially since it was a used bookstore. It's always hard for me to navigate those because they're not usually laid out in a way that I like fully understand for some reason. But this place was really cute. It was almost like going into a Blockbuster in a way. I don't really know how to describe that, but it was like a time capsule. And I hope that when that old man passes away, somebody buys it and keeps it going, or somebody inherits it. So I asked the man who owned the bookstore what the last book he read was, which is what I tried to do in every scenario, but sometimes the last book somebody read was like a self-help book about like back pain or something. So he told me that the last book he read was called Beware of the Trains, which sounds interesting. This is definitely not a book I would normally pick up. It is this tiny little thing, so if I don't like it, it'll be easy for me to get through. Except the pages are like really, really crammed with words. There's like almost no space in between the letters and the sentences. So this book is old. But it's a Penguin novel, so maybe that's a good sign. And it is a mystery. So I'll read the back. Who burglarized the train heading for Victoria Station, and whatever became of its conductor? Did the village idiot, Mrs. Foley, murder the mean-spirited Edgar Foley, or could the constable be responsible for the devious deed? Who on earth will be able to untangle the affair of the disappearing car, the black necktie, and the abortive theft? Enter Gervasi Finn, Oxford professor and sometimes super sleuth, an expert at solving cases that battle even the most astute policemen. These 16 short classics by a master of the modern detective story will test your crime-solving abilities as well. Edmund Crispin has provided all the clues you need to detect the solution, using logic and common sense. Can you meet the challenge? So that's interesting. I've never been challenged on the back of a book. So yeah, it sounds like it's gonna be kind of funny and cute, so I'm hoping that it'll be an easy read. Because I could definitely foresee myself reading something this old and being kind of bored. But, you know, the back of the book is promising. So we'll see. I don't think I've ever truly read a purely a mystery book, so that'll be cool. So the last bookstore I went into was a used bookstore as well, and it was very small. So I don't even think I filmed the inside of it, because there were like 3 people in there and it was packed. So I didn't really feel like filming. But that was also in Raleigh, and that was the last bookstore I went to because I was honestly just exhausted from talking that many people and driving all over the place. So this book is by Thomas Wolfe, who is apparently an Asheville author. So I thought that was cool. And the woman who worked there, again, recommended me this book. I don't remember her name now, but she was pretty cool. So she told me to read this. This is called Look Homeward Angel by Thomas Wolfe. And this is a big beasto book. So I really hope I like this one, because if I don't, it's going to be tough. How many pages is this book? And the pages are big, you know? I guess this isn't anything to laugh at here. Okay, so this book is 508 pages, and it's like long. It's like a long book. But I think this is a classic. That's good. I honestly don't know how you tell something's a classic, or even really what kind of book it is. Like, some people are like, oh, this is literary fiction. And I'm like, oh, what's that? I don't know. Or people will be like, this is a novel. And I apparently I read a lot of novels. I don't really know what that means. But yeah. Anyway, so let's read the back of this one. The stunning classic coming-of-age novel written by one of America's foremost Southern writers. A legendary author on par with William Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor, Thomas Wolfe has published Look Homeward Angel, his first novel about a young man's burning desire to leave his small town and tumultuous family in search of a better life, in 1929. It gave the world proof of his genius and launched a powerful legacy. The novel follows the trajectory of Eugene Gant, a brilliant and restless young man whose wanderlust and passion shape his adolescent years in rural North Carolina. Wolfe said that Look Homeward Angel is a book made out of my life, and his largely autobiographical story about the quest for a greater intellectual life has resonated with and influenced generations of readers, including some of today's most important novelists. Rich with lyrical prose and vivid characterizations, this 20th century American classic will capture the hearts and imaginations of every reader. Let's just open the first page and see if it's something that I can read. So the book actually starts on page 5. A destiny that leads the English to the Dutch is strange enough, but one that leads from Epsom to Pennsylvania and thence into the hills that shut in Almont over the proud choral cry of the cock, and the soft stone smile of an angel is touched by that dark miracle of chance which makes new magic in a dusty world. Each of us is all the sums he has not counted. Subtract us into nakedness and night again, and you shall see begin in Crete 4,000 years ago, the love that ended yesterday in Texas. Ooh, I don't even know what that means. The seed of our destruction will blossom in the desert. The elixir of our cure grows by a mountain rock, and our lives are haunted by a Georgia slattern, because a London cut purse went unhung. Each moment is the fruit of 40,000 years. The minute-winning days, like flies, buzz home to death, and every moment is a window on all time. This is a moment. Okay, so that was the first 3 paragraphs. I think I don't know 5 of the words out of out of those paragraphs. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know Alexin, Alexin. I don't know what a slattern is, Slattern. I've never heard the word thence, but I know what it means. Yeah, I think that this one's definitely going to be a struggle. I think it's going to take me a long time to get into, maybe. Well, it's not, actually, it seems like it gets a little easier to read because it's a lot of dialogue. But that's definitely something I'm going to have to read multiple times to really understand. I think what the first 3 paragraphs is saying is like, it's kind of maybe touching on the butterfly effect that, like, you know, it says, because a London cut purse went unhung, our lives are haunted by a Georgia slattern. And I don't know what slattern means, but to me it sounds like one thing happens and then leads to another thing, and if that thing had been changed before it happened, then you know, it would have changed the course of like everybody's lives or something. So yeah, I'm hoping that I like this book because it's very big. And it's written by a local author, so I wonder if he's still alive. Thomas Wolfe was born in Asheville, North Carolina, and educated at the University of North Carolina and Harvard University. He taught English at New York University and traveled extensively in Europe and America. Wolfe created his indelible legacy as a classic American novelist with works including Of Time in the River, A Stone, a Leaf, a Door, and From Death to Morning. He died in 1938. Okay, so this man is dead. You know. But, yeah. And then, because I went into so many bookstores, there are just some things that I could not look away from. So, I bought 3 books that no one recommended to me. And the first one is Of Time and Turtles. And this just sounded so interesting to me that I could not just leave the bookstore without buying it because I knew I would never remember to buy it otherwise. So this is by Cy Montgomery. Cy is kind of a cool name. It says it's a New Scientist Best Book of the Year. So I'm assuming that means it has to be nonfiction. In the basement of a bright green but otherwise ordinary suburban house, 2 women are caring for hundreds, sometimes thousands, of sick and injured turtles. There are painted and snapping turtles whose shells were crushed by cars, spotted turtles who were chewed by dogs, box turtles with shells deformed from years of inept care and captivity, exotic pet tortoises abandoned by their owners, turtles rescued from the illegal trade in wildlife, baby turtles hatched from eggs rescued from slain mothers. Some of these cases seem hopeless. Turtles arrive with brain trauma, broken jaws, missing limbs, but Turtle Rescue League's motto is never give up on a turtle. And while helping heal the wounded, visiting a breeding facility for the world's most endangered species, protecting backyard nests, and rescuing endangered cold-stunned sea turtles from a wintry beach, National Book Award finalist Cy Montgomery and wildlife artist Matt Patterson found these ancient, long-lived creatures to be unexpected guides to probing the mysteries of time itself. Compassionate and deeply researched, warm and astonishing, this book is an invitation to slip into turtle time, not the tick-tock hurry of human hustle, but the sacred, eternal time of daylight, darkness, and seasons. It's a story that shows us a way to heal the world, beset with unprecedented perils, shell by shattered shell. So this was just something I could not leave the store without. So I'm excited to read this one. And then I bought a Murakami book because people I've been watching on YouTube have really been hyping Murakami up. So I went into my own local bookstore in Asheville and asked a bookseller there which Murakami book they would suggest, and it was this one. So Toru, a serious young college student in Tokyo, is devoted to Naoko, a beautiful and introspective young woman. But their mutual passion is marked by the tragic death of their best friend years before. As Naoko retreats further into her own world, Toru finds himself drawn to a fiercely independent and sexually liberated young woman. A magnificent coming-of-age story steeped in nostalgia, Norwegian Wood blends the music, the mood, and the ethos that were the 60s with a young man's hopeless and heroic first love. So I am really excited. I hope that I like this book and I can get into Murakami, because I'd like to read more Japanese authors after reading Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Okay, so the only thing I did was I had a copy of this, but it was so waterlogged that I never wanted to pick it up. So this is a book about modern relationships and comparing modern relationships to, early human relationships, I think. I think it's about kind of justifying polyamory maybe, but I don't know. It says How We Mate, Why We Stray, and What It Means for Modern Relationships. In this controversial, thought-provoking, and brilliant book, renegade thinkers Christopher Ryan and Cecilda Jetha debunk almost everything we know about sex, weaving together convergent, frequently overlooked evidence from anthropology, archaeology, primatology, anatomy, and psychosexuality to show how far from human nature monogamy really is. In Sex at Dawn, the authors expose ancient roots of human sexuality while pointing towards a more optimistic future illuminated by our innate capacities for love, cooperation, and generosity. Pretty much just picked up this book because my friend River, shout out to River, gave me a copy of his book, which somebody left out in the rain, and told me that this would be helpful for me to read. Since I was struggling so much after my ex-boyfriend, whatever, I'm not even gonna finish that sentence. So yeah, I'm gonna read this eventually. I think it'll be interesting because I've never been one to really be super into the idea of polyamory. I think I definitely can see the value in polyamory, and I definitely think that monogamy is kind of sexist, simply because of how it was started. And if you don't know about that, then you can look into it yourself. But also, I think in a lot of ways, monogamy was also a kind of a colonial invention to make sure that men's true children inherited their property. So it's I think that it is beautiful when two people love each other very much and don't love anybody else. But I don't know how practical it really is, because it seems to me like people can't actually keep their genitals in their pants and away from other people. So I'm interested to read this book. So we have our stack of books. I think the first one I'm going to read is this one, just because it's so small. And then I'm probably going to read The Time War after that, because those are the two that I think will be the easiest to get through. And then I will start probably on A Botanical Daughter, Legends and Lattes, and then move on to James and the Thomas Wolfe book. So I will put out a video of me reading these things eventually, probably the next couple videos, and I will talk about what I think about them. So we'll revisit those as time goes on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it. So I hope you share it with your friends, and I hope you like and subscribe. And even though I only have like 30 subscribers right now, I've really been enjoying making content and putting stuff out. So I hope that, you know, y'all keep watching, because if you keep watching, then I'll keep making stuff. All right.